Good morning, ASEAN. Freshen up your world, your thought, your idea with us every weekday from 7:30 to 8 a.m.
And I'm Rina Dongprasit.
Yep. And then the biggest story today is, of course, the Malaysia's election. They call for a fresh dissolution of parliament. But this call, Kun Rina and our lovely audience, presents his multi-ethnic country and fractured with a stark choice. Firstly, you stick with the ruling party, that has governed the Muslim majority country over a half century already, or usher in an era of potentially sweeping change by Anwar Ibrahim's opposition alliance. However, Mr. Najib's biggest challenge still might be to keep his job as a PM intact, even if the National Front wins. So he could face an internal challenge, if he fails to improve on the government's current tally of 136 seats in a 222-seat parliament. The Prime Minister also faces a potential backlash among nationalist groups who fear he is giving up too many privileges accorded the ethnic Malay majority, who have enjoyed easier access to everything from state universities to housing loans. But then opposition leader Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim said yesterday evening he welcomed Prime Minister Najib Razak's vow to ensure a peaceful transition of power, but appealed for an ethical campaign amid an escalating political violence in the run-up to election. So Mr. Anwar believes Malaysians are prepared for change. He's very confident, isn't he, Kun Rina? Since he was cleared of sodomy charges last year, he has since then campaigned relentlessly, tapping into a desire for swifter reform among younger Malaysians by pledging more transparency, a tougher stance on corruption, and plans to eliminate the affirmative action policies. He also made a fresh invitation to the Barisan National Chairman for a debate so both sides of the political spectrum may engage in a mature election driven by a fair contest of ideas. The odds yet remain in Najib's, favor. The government controls many newspapers and broadcasters, leaving opposition voices to turn to the internet only. But Malaysian stock prices rebounded at the end of trading after election jitters caused the index to reach a 2-week low just before PM Najib announced the parliament dissolution. The FTSE Bursa Malaysia Kuala Lumpur Composite Index closed at 1,685.4 points.
And it was said that this election was really a historical political event because it was the first time that Malaysia has called this parliamentary dissolution ever since it's gained independence from Great Britain. Well, we have an interview last night we'll pull up for the audience today with a law professor from the University of Malaya, also on this Malaysian elections. Let's take a look.
Professor, now the election is expected in 30 days, if I'm not mistaken. It's said to be quite tough for the ruling coalition party. Can you elaborate on how tough will it be?
Tough for whom?
For the ruling coalition party.
It's going to be difficult because there's been a lot of scandals with regards to corruption. And these have been very high-profile exposés about corruption within the ruling party. So that's one issue. Another issue, of course, is the general unhappiness with the ruling coalition, not just with regards to corruption, but also with regards to how they are controlling the institutions of government, and also their lack of a stand on true racial and religious harmony.
Right, Professor, talking about the rest this time, will it be a challenge or a potential one for opposition Anwar Ibrahim's party?
Well, having said all that, it's going to be very, very difficult for the opposition party. We've got to understand that, for example, the media, the mass media, apart from the internet, newspapers and televisions are totally in the control of the government. So it's very hard for the opposition to get their message across to the majority of Malaysians. So it's not going to be easy for them. And on top of that, recently we've been seeing, very bad behavior on the part of the supporters of the government. They've been attacking opposition rallies. They've been using, violence and threatening methods to try to undermine the opposition's attempts at reaching the people.
Right. Now, with that said, regarding to the scandals that's within the ruling party, you said it's tough for them, and it is quite tough for the opposition as well in terms of passing out their message. How much chance will that leave for Anwar?
I'm going to be sitting on the fence here, and I think most people would probably agree that it's going to be a very close fight. It's probably going to be 50-50. But I think it's harder for the opposition because apart from all the things I've said earlier, we've also got to understand that over the years, the government has made sure that the constituencies are delineated in favor of them. So if they feel that an area is more in favor of themselves, you have constituencies with very few voters. So it's easier for the government to actually get the vote enough for seats in Parliament than it is for the opposition.
Right. Professor, if we would like to carry on with another issue in point with the policies that are said to be important to win the votes, especially for the non-Malays, which earlier reports have said that these group of people plays a crucial portion for PM Najib. So what sort of important policies will grab the votes for the non-Malays?
Well, I think the most important one is that the opposition has very clearly said that they are not going to be focusing on affirmative action based on race. They have very clearly said that any help given to the poorer segments of the Malaysian community will be based on need and not on race. The government has not been able to say this. They have not said this at all. So that's one very, very important thing where it's clear that the opposition is more in line towards Malaysia, which is colorblind. Also, the opposition has promised changes in the institutions of government, which, we're talking about the judiciary, the Attorney General's chambers, the Election Commission. These are very, very important changes which need to take place. Because right now, the institutions of government are very much under the control of the executive. So I think these two things, on top of the promise that they will fight corruption very, very hard, I think these are going to be very important factors.
Right.
Well, thank you so much, Professor, for joining our program.
Kapun Kap, anytime.
As I said earlier, the Malaysian stock index rebounded after a call for a fresh dissolution of parliament. But then there was a major report, Kumbina, saying that Malaysian stock index actually is the worst performer this year.
Well, in contradictory in this next report by JP Morgan, it says that Malaysia has actually outperformed in terms of its stock performance in the Asia-Pacific region. Let's take a look at this report right now.
The Kuala Lumpur Composite Index outperformed the MSCI Asia Pacific, excluding Japan, in March this year, with performance rate of 2.1% and negative 1.7% respectively, according to the financial services firm JP Morgan. Domestic-led growth companies rallied despite upcoming general elections. Iskandar Malaysia, the Southern Development Corridor in Johor, sees its related stocks outperform on warming Singapore-Malaysia relationship. Foreign participation averaged 32.5% for March compared to 30.7% for February. Healthcare and financials were the main outperformers. For the month of January, industrial production contracted 1.6% month-on-month in both mining and manufacturing, leaving overall production up about 4.5%. JP Morgan reports that Malaysian exports were up a marginal 0.4% month-on-month, with a rise in electronics that could reflect some front-loading ahead of the Lunar New Year in mid-February. Imports were up 7.3% month-on-month, with intermediate goods up a firm 6.8% month-on-month, mitigating the impact of a more mixed data for domestic demand, capital, and consumption goods on pre-elections uncertainty. This resulted in an overall narrower trade balance of $1.5 billion. Malaysia's February inflation rose 1.5% year-on-year, with core prices excluding food and energy up 1% month-on-month. The main driver of the increase was food, likely reflecting the seasonal impact of the Lunar New Year. Looking further ahead, 2013 inflation is expected to rise an average of between 2 to 3% year-on-year on increases in subsidized fuel prices, which JP Morgan said it expects to be delivered in gradual steps rather than a single shock.
Moving on to Vietnam, as credit institutions in the country are no longer allowed to give loans to customers who want to purchase gold in any form, including primary gold bullion and jewelry. Well, according to the State Bank of Vietnam, or SBV, it affirmed that the regulation would strengthen the state's management of gold trading activities. Banks, however, would be allowed to provide financing for genuine working capital requirements of jewelry traders and manufacturers, but only with the approval of the Central State Bank. The SBV also told credit institutions that they should not turn gold deposits into other currencies, including dong. They also must not use gold deposits as collateral for loans from other credit institutions. The central bank has asked credit institutions to carry out measures to collect their loans that are now in gold or turn these outstanding loans into dong-denominated loans. The SBV decision is expected to slow down the number of gold deposits and curb the practice of commercial banks liquidizing gold deposits for lending or for use as collateral for interbank loans. The country's gold imports in the first quarter unexpectedly surged sevenfold against the same period last year.